Listeners be advised. The Soliloquy podcast discuss matters related to the human experience and many that are sexual in nature. Due to this, some conversations may surround triggering topics such as sexual violence, self-harm, abuse, and much more. Please be advised, a list of crisis and psychological resources will be available in the show notes of this episode. With that said, let's get started with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions.
In the event that there is a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop from the overhead. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Breathe normally as oxygen is flowing even if the mask is not inflated. Be sure to adjust your own mask before helping others.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. This is your favorite host, Vernon T. Scott, also known as Slaytor Jackson, and you freak motherfuckers out there, Sebastian Adams. On today's episode, we will be talking about gender, and joining me today is Tyrell. Y'all, it's been a while since, I've been podcasting like a full month from my break. Y'all don't need to know that. Y'all probably don't even know what the hell is really going on this end because this episode is like going to be releasing like in April or some shit like that. But it is what it is. Happy New Year, y'all. That's all I'm saying, to give y'all a glimpse of how early this damn thing was recorded. So I'm fresh off and energized. Like Tyrell is literally my first person of the year that I'm recording an episode with. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I feel so honored to be one of the first guests, of course. I always love coming and speaking. Happy New Year to obviously all the fans. Obviously, as it was said, like this won't come out till April, but definitely have wishing everybody a good 2023 so far. And let's get to these goals. Let's get to these goals that we have. And then if you haven't planned any goals, you need to plan some.
Oh yes. I don't know what things are going to be looking like in April. I hope things are good for a lot of people. But when it comes to like resolutions, I personally stopped doing resolutions because
Right.
it didn't make sense to me after a while. Because
Mhm.
I learned that why am I waiting to a whole new year to begin something that's supposed to be a habit or something that's going to be
Right.
good for me? So I just like, if I want to do something, I'm going to start it today.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I've never really gotten into resolutions like personally myself because to me, I think resolutions are always like they're always out of the box.
Hmm.
Like we set them like way too high. It's like I can't like you can't go from 0 to 100 and say like, oh, like I'm about to do this in the next couple months. Like, no, that's really not how those things work. Create
Exactly.
short-term manageable goals, and hey, if you exceed them, wonderful. If not, then you manage disappointment. And hey, with a lot of goals we have, unfortunately, it's a reality. We have a lot of disappointment that happens. So, mitigate, manage expectations.
Look, SMART goals, people. And if I remember the acronym correctly, it's been a while, y'all. So please don't judge me. Look, life. But anyways, it's SMART goals are specific, measurable. Is it attainable?
Yeah, I
Are
think it's attainable time.
um so like just set something. It can be like, hey, I plan on losing, well, my goal is to lose 5 pounds by the end of by the end of 2 weeks. That's something that is
Mhm.
specific. It has a time frame for you to measure it. You have an amount that you can measure, which is 5 pounds. Is reasonable. You can lose 5 pounds in like 2 weeks, depending on how you exercise and all this other stuff. Now, if it's 40 pounds in 2 weeks, look, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen for you unless you're doing some kind of surgery or something that you shouldn't be doing. Please don't
Mhm.
do that. Please don't. Look, weight loss is great. It's important for some people, but don't hurt yourself trying to lose weight. Love yourself
Mhm.
first. Oh my
Exactly.
God.
Exactly. Exactly.
But like I do hate the push, and I'm going to lean this into the conversation. This is not one of those topics, but it is dealing with gender. But I do hate the societal pressure that is put on a lot of people when it comes to their
Mm,
weight, most definitely when it comes to women presenting people too, because it's like,
mm.
oh, you
Absolutely.
have to look fine and look this way in order for you to get a mate, or you have to be slender, you have to be all these things that are not really natural.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
remember
And
there
then
was, mhm,
Yeah, and then there's this opposite narrative, especially like I've heard a lot of women talk about in the, in circles about there's this language that, especially dealing with men, that men like women who are natural.
mm,
And, a lot of women that I talk to are kind of like taken aback by that because they're like, what does like being natural actually mean? So it's kind of like to connotate like, okay, I like a woman like in her natural element, like she doesn't need to, like put on makeup or, like dress in heels or, whatever. But then it's kind of like you have to think about like the language that, like that's putting out. It's like,
mhm,
yeah, why can't, anybody for that matter, just be versatile in what they do. Like I can love dressing down and, just if I'm going out for 5 minutes, not, necessarily dressing up or whatever, but just because I may dress in heels or I may put on makeup, does that change the nature of how you look at me
exactly.
now? So it's kind of like the language around like, okay, like what does liking being natural like
Mhm.
mean?
And it's like one of the things that really I guess bother me is like whenever okay, I don't know where my mind was going. Hold up. The thought left me. Jesus, why would you do that? Why would you do that to me? I had something. I had something. I truly had something there. Oh my God. This is why I cannot be on a podcast and be live and have ADHD because shit like this happens.
Yeah, that's where the best no, but that's where the best moments come in though.
But you're right. You're right. You're right. Where was I? It's probably going to come back to me. But there was another thing that I was thinking about, like whenever, like with most definitely within the queer community, whenever people are just like, oh, I need, well, with men, and masculine presenting people, how there's that ideal look that a man is
Mhm,
supposed to be it muscular, thin, or whatever, and how
mhm,
that is just pushed so heavily. And it's just like,
mhm,
why not just love me? Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Why not just love me for me
mhm,
and just accept me for who I am? Like, if you find me attractive, you find me attractive, and that is okay. I don't have to fit a certain mold for you to
mhm,
be happy with me. Like, let me be me. Like, I'm a firm believer, and I tell people this very often that if you cannot love me and like me when I look, I guess, my worst or my most basic, you do
mhm.
not deserve to be with me when I look my best because you're going to see the basic look of me on a regular basis. That's going to be how I dress on a daily basis. That's just going to be who I am because I like to be comfortable. I'm not going to
Mhm.
be out here in formal attire every time I go outside because that's just not me. If I'm going to an event where I might have to do that, I would think about it. It would be a real thought process. Like, do I really want to be formal and look the part, or do
Mhm.
I just want to be me touched up? Like,
Absolutely.
if
And
you
then
can,
it's yeah. And then it's also about like just being truthful with yourself. Like
hmm
honestly, if you are a shallow person, like be honest in that, but then like try to, I'm not necessarily saying to change it, but examine why you actually have these kind of what you would call shallow thoughts. Just because you may like a particular aesthetic doesn't mean that, like you have to indulge in the nature of the shallowness. So it's like there, and like I've often always said, people get the nature of preference versus like standard and something
hmm
like they must have very confused. Like preference could be like, oh, I prefer someone of this height, but if I meet someone that is not that height, it's not like I turn my nose up or something.
hmm
But people will have this language around, oh, this is my preference, and then it's not really a preference. It's like a definitive, kind of
hmm
aspect. So it's like if you're not this, I'm not checking for you. So,
exactly.
it's like it's okay to admit like you're shallow. I think we're all a little bit shallow
I agree.
when it comes to certain things, but it's just about the way that you project that onto other people. And then now that is the main narrative about you. that you present.
Exactly. It's
So,
like just acknowledge that's who you are, and that's fine. Like for me, whenever like if you're looking for love, a lot of time preferences go out the window
mhm,
because are not even preferences, those deal breakers. Now,
mhm,
not to say that all of them, like your red flags or your triggers and things like that, do not play a part in who you select because it probably should. It should.
mhm,
But in terms of if you are finding somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with, the next 10 years with, are the people, if you are in a um, on the poly spectrum, the people that you want to spend the rest of your life with, you're not focusing so heavily on what they're looking like. And
mhm.
like, yeah, attraction matters. It does matter. But the attraction that you have for this person is not always directly on that physicality because you
Right.
find the chubby person attractive who fits the characteristics that you're looking for. You find the skinny
Mhm.
person attractive, the muscular person attractive. You find the people within this vast array of identity attractive,
Exactly.
not just because of, oh, they had this certain body type. If you
Right.
say that you're looking for love, just be real with yourself. Are you looking for an image or are you looking for the actual thing?
Exactly. Exactly. Because, you know, and just speaking personally for myself, like I had a friend ask me recently, like, do I have like a particular like type of person, you know, like I'm attracted to as far as attraction. And when I thought about it, I was like, no, actually really like I don't like when it comes to like aesthetic because I find different aspects of different people to be attractive, no matter if you're tall, short, if you're a bigger guy, smaller guy, whatever that is. So the aesthetic, that yeah, there are certain things that yeah I am attracted to, but that doesn't blind me into, oh, like just because this person doesn't have this, then it stops me from getting to know. Then it may stop me from getting to know someone. And then yeah, there are people who I do meet that they not necessarily, I would think like my kind of, like aesthetically attractive as far as like a romantic nature, but that still doesn't mean that, like I can't be cool with this person. Like,
Mhm.
because I always feel like there shouldn't necessarily, I think, be a delineation to, okay, if I don't feel these romantic feelings in first meeting somebody, that I have to just completely shut this off. You never know. That person may have walked into your life for a reason.
Mm,
So even if that's not a romantic connection, I always feel like as a teacher, kind of like myself, I feel like life is a classroom. There are things that you are there to learn and unlearn, and that things that you are there to teach and be taught.
mm. Yes.
So there is not always going to be like, oh, if oh, I find you, I thought I found you attractive, we meet up, it's not that kind of chemistry that I'm looking for, so it was just a big waste of time. Like, no, like you don't have to necessarily put yourself in the mind frame like that. That person was maybe there to teach you something,
Mm.
or for you to, take away, some sort of lesson.
The Holiloquy podcast focuses on the variability of sexual expression. When it comes to sexual expression, we often depend on pornography to illustrate how one must perform sexually. For those who have not learned this by now, the stuff you see in porn is not real. Pornography provides a singular perspective of sexual expression that is not often the reality we see during our own sexual encounters. The Holiloquy podcast is a conversation that takes you outside of the compressed box of what many know about sex. Some of the topics we discuss includes kinks, condom usage, status disclosure, and past sexual experiences. The Holiloquy podcast steps out on sexual norms and recognizes that the norm is not the only normal. Subscribe today and join the conversation.
That person was maybe there to teach you something, or
Mm.
for you to take away some sort of lesson. So I just, I feel like people sometimes are a lot of times too quick to close the door because something is not clicking or something is
Mhm.
not there. And you never know. You blocking blessings
Ooh,
that may be for you.
amen to that. Like I've learned over the years that there's some people that I'm not physically attracted to, but I'm very sexually attracted to, and then there's others that I'm not sexually attracted to that I am sexually attracted to, but not physically attracted to. And
Mhm.
it's always been like a give and take. But however, those people that match both, oh my gosh, it's like it's amazing.
Mhm. And that's a word because I ultimately feel like, and this kind of gets into a little bit of the gender topic, because what you just said is something that I think a lot of, particularly women, tend to be confused about a lot. And it's not just comes from like shows and stuff like that, but I've ultimately heard women have these kind of conversations where it's like they'll meet a guy or something, and like they seem to like have this like physical chemistry, like this sexual chemistry. They may, decide to go there intimately or not. And then all of a sudden, the guy is kind of like telling them that, oh, well, I think we should slow things down or something because like I didn't have like that physical attraction, like first. And then so like I get why a lot of women would be confused. It's like, well, how could you be this intimate with me if like you don't have if you like you were struggling with physical attraction,
Mhm,
like to me like that doesn't make sense. But like you just said, that there's a difference between being physically attracted and sexually
mhm,
attracted. And I'm not going to stigmatize, of course, but for a lot of men, those two delineations don't have to happen at the same time. Like you can be hesitant or not find this person, particularly this woman, to be, your physical type or attraction, but you can still, get along enough to sleep with her.
mhm.
And so it's kind of like I think kind of like moving forward, I hope that everyone for this matter, and not just women, but everybody for this matter, takes into account that there are delineations and there are differences between being physically attracted to somebody and sexually attracted.
Look, sometimes you just like, oh my God, I want to fuck you. I don't really
Yeah,
want to be around you often,
yeah,
but oh my God, can we just jump bones like
yeah.
every other now and then? Like, what the
Hmm.
fuck is up? And sometimes it is just like, I
Yeah.
do enjoy your company. I do enjoy looking at you, but at the same time, I don't want to be sexually intimate with you at all. Like,
Yeah.
you're just great to look at. Like,
Hmm.
it's kind of like with some of the celebrities out there. Like
Hmm.
every celebrity, I don't want to have sex with. Like the majority of them, I really do not want to have sex with. But whenever I do look at them, oh my God, you are so attractive. If I saw them in person, oh my fucking God, you are
Hmm.
beautiful in person, but that's it. Like,
Yeah.
go about your business. Like, there's
Right.
nothing here for you, but you're
Right.
very beautiful. I love that for you. But it's a thing, y'all.
It's a thing. Yeah. It's a thing.
But one of the things that we were to talk about for this episode is actually your dissertation because it does deal with
Okay.
gender. So, do you mind explaining that dissertation for everybody and how your
Yeah.
progress is going and if you found anything interesting so far?
Absolutely. So yeah, so right now, currently, as this is being recorded, I am in that middle stage of what we call prospectus. So I am trying to defend my proposal so that I can actually write my dissertation. And so what I've had to do is, to look at so basically what my project is that I am studying the nature of LGBTQ BIPOC memoirs. So if anybody is unfamiliar with the acronym for BIPOC, it means Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. And so basically, what really has been interesting about my venture into my work is that with me being in English and writing studies, particularly for rhetoric and how authors compose text, it's really been fascinating to see about how even for people who are in the LGBTQ spectrum and who do identify some part in on of being black or other ethnicities as well, that when we get into conversations about misogyny, about fat phobia, and kind of like just all of these kind of aspects. One of my authors, Hardy Zayed, talks about in the nature of their memoir, Black Boy Out of Time, this kind of carceral dissonance that we have. And basically, for what I took from what that means is that the nature of our intersections of our identity create these manifestations about how it is that we experience people. And it's just been really interesting to hear very different notions about, again, how, I can read this Black queer woman, in the nature of her memoir, talk about fat phobia. And then I can read this Black queer woman and, see and, recognize that their experiences, even though they may be of like mind, are entirely different.
Mm.
So again, and even though obviously it's something that I knew going in, not everybody's experiences are the same, but to read those, to hear and read those experiences out loud, because our experiences are, of course, shaped from many things: our environment, our economic status, you know, and so all of these aspects. But one of the great commonalities that I have found, I think, regardless of cross gender, across no matter how you identify on the spectrum, is that there is a fight for survival when you are living on the margins of an already exclusive society. It's already a fight when you are LGBTQ. That's already a whole fight in general. And then when you add the nature of you being a Black, Indigenous, or person of color, now you're operating on yet other margins
Mm.
of society. And then when you add all of those other intersections of your identity, if you are a bigger person, if you are a Black nerd, if you are into anime, or or you have had to face the nature of misogyny, and just all these type things, it's like every intersect of identity that you have, you are having to learn to take pride in, but learning that it's a constant fight. It's a
Mm.
constant fight.
That's a word. That brought back conversations related to how we tend to like put a blanket statement on a lot of people.
Mm,
And like whenever I see the discourse on social media about Black men, Black women, and just like how people are oppressed, and the oppression Olympics that be going on, and I'm just like,
mm,
but we never take the time to actually step back and think about the intersections that of how this person may have been treated throughout their lives.
mm,
Like, not to say that, Black men and Black women, though we are treated differently, but we are all treated badly. So
mm.
let me just preface that we're all treated badly. Like, it's horrible.
Right,
It's
it's
horrible
bad.
here.
It's
But
just bad.
in having conversations, most definitely in the space primarily of Black women, when they're just not trying to hear the Black men's perspective and think
Mm,
that me, telling that is erasing the experiences of Black women. And it's just like, that's nothing that I was saying. That's nothing that
mhm,
I'm, trying to argue that you all are not being discriminated against within the Black community, because I see it. But at
mhm,
the same time, you also have to acknowledge the discrimination, the hardships that are facing Black men that sometimes come from Black women too. And like, we don't often see the nuances that the intersections have. For example, when you have misogynoir, that is something that is that women hold themselves as well as men. Like toxic masculinity. That's one. Whenever I actually sit down and build this course, this
mhm,
online course about rape culture, that's one of the things I'm going to dive deep into, is because a lot of people don't understand that feminine presenting people hold toxic masculinity too.
mhm,
It's not just something that is that has the full ownership of men, especially like white men and all that. Black men have it. We all have it on some level, or we've all been oppressed by it on some level. But you have to recognize that I may have played a role in this too. Like
Exactly.
when I was driving today, I was thinking about how some people get offended over, I was thinking about when Beyonce had to change her lyric in one of those songs, and y'all forgive
Mm,
me, I'm not the hugest Beyonce fan. If you got
right.
triggered by that, fuck you. I'm joking. I'm joking. but when she had to change that lyric, take out the word spaz because the
Mhm.
people in Europe felt some type of way about it, which rightfully so. But for me, I feel like you have to recognize the culture of Beyonce too, if you're going to make this claim, the intentionality behind it, and her intersections of her upbringing. She's not from the UK, she's from the US, as well as she's a Black woman from the US.
Mm,
So that word spaz is not the same usage as you may see in the UK, where it's not prejudicial, is more of a way of us expressing ourselves in a colloquial manner.
right.
And to understand that is to understand the culture. That thought brought me to how, the other things that people could find offense to, which was, y'all, this is how the ADHD brain works. I'm sorry. All of this happened within like a minute, like this thought process. But that brought me to a point where I was thinking about the word pussy.
Mm,
And this is going on gender too. How within, I was watching some show and there was a feminine presenting person in queer spaces. In this, she identified as a cis woman, and she was like, she takes offense. It was a white woman too. She takes offense by the queer community using the word pussy, and not knowing because that term and a lot of things within the queer community comes from Black people,
mm,
and Black as well as Hispanic people. Pussy is something that is strong. It means you did something good. It's a positive word. That shit was pussy. Yes, you did what needed to be done. Okay, like it was great. But you also have to think about the type of lingo that's often used towards queer men in their upbringing in the
mm,
US, or even men in general, when they are seen as being a lot less than a man. They're called pussy, they're called weak, and all these other
mm.
things. And if you revitalize that word and make it into something strong, like a lot of women have done too, what's the issue? Like we have to think about the intentionality behind the words. We also have to think about the intersections of our identities, so that we can like appreciate each other a lot more, rather
Mm.
than taking so much offense, or rather than not being able to communicate with each other about the things that we are experiencing in our lives.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's something because I think especially with dealing with men who are masculine presenting, it's this dichotomy about, you ever notice that when typically I think a man is being like talked down to, or like, you're going for that jugular, it's not until you get to that name calling, either of calling a man a bitch or calling him a pussy, or whatever, then that violent aggression
Hmm.
starts to show up. And I've seen that happen with a lot of men, where it's like you can talk, or say whatever, but when you get to the nature of name calling, where you know uh a man feels like you are emasculating him, now
Hmm.
now it's turns into a violent problem now.
Hmm.
And it's something because, like you say, the way that we connote phrasing, colloquialisms, are very different. And I thought it was very interesting about when uh the situation with Beyonce did happen. And again, no offense to any viewers, I'm not the biggest Beyonce fan, but I did think it was a very interesting kind of segment to happen, because I would think, for as I don't know, as obviously as huge of a star that Beyonce is, that on one hand I thought it was odd that she actually went back and did it, because I don't think that if she didn't, that would have diminished anything of her.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also glad in a sense because it's like, well, you can see that she's also listening to her fan base
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that she doesn't have just one particular fan base. And so I think the lesson here to when those kind of, when those kind of situations happen is that if you're going to make the change, do it as, okay, I've learned this lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know not to do it in the future. But like you say, it wasn't something that was intentional because, like you say, with the nature of our colloquialisms, our phrasing, things mean different. They have
Mm-hmm.
very different meanings, very different variations. So I even recognize, like for myself, like saying the word spaz growing up, or I don't even remember if I've even said the word, but the way that I've heard the word connoted, I never connoted it with being part of the disabled community.
Mm-hmm.
For me particularly, and I don't know, maybe you heard something different growing up as well. Whenever I heard a person called a spaz, I associated with like somebody being called like you're like an out of box nerd, or or something along that connotation. So like when people say, oh, you're just a spaz,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I never connoted the nature of the word spaz to connote it to, the disabled community. And maybe that's because of the fact I didn't necessarily know the definition of the word. Because, of course, we hear things all the time. We don't necessarily know what they mean, know what they mean, or even if we're using them or not. But yeah, just being purely ignorant of it.
Yeah, and I will
Yeah,
say, growing up, I've only heard it in terms of like, I guess spazzing out will be
yeah,
the
spazzing out,
phrasing.
right? Yeah.
But that was always something seen as something good, meaning like somebody on the dance floor spazzing out, they're dancing very
Mm,
well. So it's nothing to say that, oh, like, to diminish a person, but to say that they're doing something of a good quality. And I think that was the thing that was lacking in that moment. Like again, I love that she did show that she listens to her audience and whatnot. In Loki, I kind of think that was more of a financial
yeah.
decision to make the
Oh
change.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But
Yeah. Oh yeah. It had many other games.
but I also think that as influencers, most definitely those that are Black and of a huge unseen community, it will be great to see a lot more of cultural education from our, I guess, leaders of the community, like to encourage that, hey, I appreciate you all for saying this to me. I will take that out of the lyrics because I know it does offend you, but I want you all to still look into the culture that I'm from and how
Mhm,
that does not have a negative connotation so that you can appreciate our usage when it comes to something that you may see in our media outside of just my own performances.
mhm,
Because opening your eyes to my experiences, my culture only helps you grow and it allows me to grow
mhm,
and for my people to grow. Like there's so many different routes that can be taken to show that, look, Black people are here. We do have our own culture. We do have a voice in a lot of things. And you should educate yourselves on that too. Like I have to educate myself on your experiences too.
mhm.
Like
Absolutely.
that this can be a mutual learning experience for everybody
Absolutely.
here.
Absolutely. And even though it's a very different situation, I was of course a lot of people had a lot of things to say
Mm.
about the situation that happened with the whole Ari Spears and Tiffany Haddish,
Mm. Yeah.
thing that to have happen. And what was and this may segment into something completely different, but what I thought was interesting about the gender, kind of differentiation of that was that okay, it seems that at the basis, the consensus, even from other comedians, were just like, yeah, there's a lot of things that, being a comic or, like just coming up in the industry, like you may have done that, like you look back on that you are like, okay, I can't even believe I did that, or said, some things that are out of pocket, of course, all those type arguments. But it seems to me like for that kind of skit to be done, even at the time that it was done, it's like a lot of people's visceral reactions were just like, that's just so wrong on just so many levels. It doesn't matter that we live in a more we live in a different cultural climate now. But it's like that wasn't even, good for back then, like when that was done. But what I think is so interesting about the gender, kind of discrepancy of it is that I think the reason why Tiffany Haddish is taking the brunt of it is because of the fact that at least in my eyes, this is coming totally from my perspective, at least in my eyes, I think that the way that her career has, had a trajectory, that she's much more in the limelight
Hmm.
than Aries Spears. And then what was interesting was I saw a lot of the comments that were saying like typically, and I don't know if it was like a justification of some sort, but it's kind of like almost like a lot of people had this mentality like, okay, yeah, we would expect this from a man,
Hmm.
to be involved with this kind of thing because I don't know, maybe just because men don't think about those, those things. But for her to be a woman and then a black woman at that,
Hmm.
to be involved with a skit like that,
Yeah.
you know, it was just very interesting to hear the discrepancies. Like both people are being held accountable, but for entirely two different ways.
Yes, I think a lot of that, most definitely for Tiffany, because one, a very disturbing thing. Like, I don't even understand why.
It's for the
Why?
public. If you
Don't
haven't
watch it.
seen the skit, like it's disturbing.
Like, I did not. I saw like a small clip, like less than 10 seconds, and I was like, I cannot. What the fuck? No. But like, I think the reason why, um, Tiffany does get a lot of the flack that she's receiving outside of her trajectory is because of that maternal transference that a lot of people
Hmm.
do when it comes to women, that they
Hmm.
automatically assume just because you're a woman, you're supposed to know, like,
Yeah.
if this was your child, you would not
Hmm.
do that. This woman doesn't have a child. This woman probably doesn't have the expectation in her life to become a parent of anybody. So to expect for her to understand how incorrect that was for her to have a child in this position, regardless of what message you were trying to send, is not okay.
Hmm.
Most people who do not think about having kids, they don't think about how a kid's perspective. Honestly, some parents out here still don't think about their child's
Exactly.
perspective. So, like, the maternal transference and sometimes even paternal transference is the one thing that I need people to stop doing. Like, you
Hmm.
cannot expect people to act like parents to kids that are not their own kids.
Hmm.
Like, and you cannot expect other people to behave like what most would consider a good parent.
Yeah.
But I will say, if they sat down and thought about this and like in a logical way, in terms of like even PR way, I don't see how they even went through
Yeah,
with that.
and when incidences like this do happen, because it brings me back to the whole H&M
Mm,
segment that happened with the young black boy and the gorilla, costume. It's kind of like, I liked how after, not like, but I appreciated how after and for it had to take for this conversation to happen for after this type of incident has occurred where everybody is like, okay, so with these big corporations, everybody needs like a Jamal the intern
mm,
because it's like the fact that this got all the way through a planning phase, through strategy meetings. You have to go through the whole entire nature of the filming the commercial. And it's like throughout all of these stages, through this part, this wasn't something that was just like put together in 5 minutes and we just decided to shoot to shoot it. Like this had to go, like these type of things go through multiple stages, and you telling me like nobody saw the red flag.
no,
And
nobody
it's
was
the
like,
same, and that's what people are saying about the Tiffany Haddish and Ari Spears aspect.
mhm,
It's like no, not just holding the two of them accountable, but holding everybody
everybody.
who was a part of it accountable. And what's so interesting is for the people that are making that argument, it is to say that there's this morality debate that
Hmm.
happens because a lot of people do see that okay, yeah, you did this, you may have been on the come up or wherever you were, like you're just trying to do your job to make to make your coin, and nobody can fault that. But it's like, where does the line delineate
Mm-hmm.
between your sense of, okay, this is a job versus I have a gut wrenching problem, morality
Mm-hmm.
problem with this kid.
And I wonder if people would have had this same reaction if that clip was actually included into some type of movie like Precious.
Mm,
Because when you think about that, like if we think about the history of that character and whatnot, the childhood sexual abuse that she experienced and whatnot, and the message that came along with that, if this was a drawn out film that included that scene in it, and then
mm.
you furthered on down the line to see the redemption or whatever it is of that childhood victim, would it be something different?
Yeah, and a lot of times what I feel what happens with these commercials and these ads, it's like I say, it's like having, like, everybody needs a Jamal the intern, because it's like, even with the nature of the skit itself, and I liked how one, I can't remember who was the YouTuber, but I liked how she reviewed the nature of the skit, and I liked how she put it into a objective perspective, and how she said that the initial concept of the skit was not anything bad. In fact, it was supposed to be obviously an informative skit about the
Hmm.
dangerous aspect of, predatory nature.
Hmm.
And she said that, yeah, the skit actually starts off being that. And if they would have decided just to cut it at that very, towards that very beginning, I think when he has like this look at the child, whatever, like that, because it's such a bold message that it's like, don't think your audience are stupid.
Hmm.
Like, we get them, like, we would have got the message, but it's like the fact that it just carried on and on and on,
Hmm.
and progressively got more derailed and creepish. Like, it's like, and I was so appreciative of the fact that, she put it in that kind of objective perspective, as to say, like, this was not out of like a malice intent, like we were gonna do this to, I don't know, like send up red bells. It was supposed to be a very informative skit and a very true skit,
Hmm.
and I think that, and I do agree, like, that's how it started out. But it's kind of like, okay, instead of this being the whole 4 minutes, it should have been cut off in a minute.
Wrap it up with a bow. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. Bye.
The message was received at 1 minute and 31 seconds. Look at
Seconds.
God.
Like, yes. Oh yeah, but yeah, I do think, in all, though, when we're thinking, and I think we've seen this play out in this past year about the nature of, and we don't necessarily have to, talk about all these things, but the gender, I think, bias reactions between the whole Will and Jada entanglement aspect.
Mm,
There's gender, with the whole Will and Chris Rock debate, the nature of people receiving or not receiving well the Dave Chappelle skit, I mean, not skit, but comedy show, and just all of these incidents that have happened, and they're bringing up all, so many prevalent conversations. And it's really interesting to see how all of these artists are now speaking about what it is that they do. Because I've always been of the like mindedness that, yeah, these conversations need to happen. There are certain things that, yeah, I put in a time capsule. I can watch, 80s and 90s, comedies, and still laugh at these jokes, because that was what was happening. That's what was prevalent at the time. There are certain things I really don't find funny anymore,
mm,
and I, maybe that is because of the cultural climate, change and shift. But as a writer and as an artist myself, I've always felt like the best way to get back at an artist for the work that they put out is not to support it.
mm,
If you are constantly talking about this, and yeah, I get it, you want to put people on blast and all this, but to me, I've always believed the more attention you give something, the more it stays prevalent. That's why all artists have always said, any media, any publicity is good publicity.
exactly.
And people do things on purpose. They do these lives on purpose because they know it's going to get you talking
Exactly.
about them, which keeps them in the limelight. Now, I'm not saying to completely ignore or dismiss things that they're talking about. Like, if somebody needs to be called out about something, I do like that nature of the social media age that we live in. I like the fact that, people have it in your mind. Just because you are an A-list celebrity don't mean you can't get touched. Like,
Look.
Because like we the ones that make your career, we can be the ones to break your career.
Exactly.
But I do feel that the way that I think as an audience, we have this kind of first reactionary, type of response when you don't even know the entire story of what's going on. And yet we've come up with all these narratives that
Mm.
are put out there. And to me, I'm sorry, I've just always felt that if I don't like you or I don't really care about the work that you do, guess what? You're not getting my money. You're not getting my support. So it's like, what the hell?
Look, I don't know if I said this on the podcast before, but look, if you didn't know, now you know. The situation with Kanye, honestly,
Oh, Lord.
I have not. So I would say my lack of support for this man is like petty. And it goes back in since like he made through the wire,
Mm,
and I'm a Shaka Khan fan, and Through the Fire was my shit even back in the day. And you make this song and you take away all of the greatness of Shaka Khan. I understand he went through his own situation. He wanted to get that out there, and you choose her? No, motherfucker. Like Diamonds Ari creeped me the fuck out. Then the Jesus
mm.
Walk song really scared the hell out of me, and I was like, hold up, I just cannot. Like I was a child, y'all.
Like,
I was a
no.
child.
Yeah.
Like
And
I
that's the
just
thing about it. But that's the thing about Kanye. What I couldn't understand about Kanye and when people are commenting is that they're like, oh my God, I'm so disappointed. Like this is and I'm reading all of these comments and I'm like, but this man has like a repeated pattern of behavior. I really just don't understand. It's kind of like if you want to be here's the thing, and I want to put this to all people who are fans because I don't want to alienate nobody. If you are a fan of Kanye, stand in that if you're a fan of, fan of Kanye, you can be a fan of Kanye. But do not put, what we like to call blinders on to the
mm,
fact that this man has a repeated pattern of behavior. This is not like the first time, he's done something outlandish. And yes, I, for one, do believe that Kanye does have some mental imbalances that are matched with the nature because I do believe on some level he not I don't necessarily know how to define like a creative genius. I've always been sticky about that.
mhm,
I'm not going to say that, but he does have a level of talent and success, and I think that when you have not been not necessarily educated properly about what it is that you do, but when you have this type of platform, you have this type of popularity, you're thrown into a stratosphere that all of those things create these types of imbalances. But at some point, you have to be a grown up
mhm,
and recognize, and I've often always said that you have to stand in what it is that you do and what it is that you say and recognize you can say and do whatever you want to. However, do not be surprised if you have certain kind of reactions. Like stop
exactly,
just that's my thing. Stop being surprised by it and then
exactly.
want to take stuff back and want to apologize and do all of this type of stuff. So me personally, I've never necessarily been a Kanye fan. Like, yeah, he's came out with a song or two that I've liked, but I can't necessarily call myself like a fan
Hmm.
of his. So,
Same. Like I, for me, because I lost my mother when I was young,
mm,
and I would not be out here acting like my mama did not raise me right, because that'd be a disrespect to her name.
mm,
And for me, knowing what his mom taught and what she took part in prior to her death is giving. Did she not educate you at home? Is giving. Did she not teach you right from wrong or anything like that? Or was she even good at her job?
mm,
Because that's all that I see every time this man speaks.
mm.
It's like if I know for myself, and of course I cannot project my behavior onto his mother, most definitely since she's no longer with us. But I don't see myself having a child that does not respect our heritage
Mm.
in any kind of way, most definitely if that's what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah, and it's interesting about the approaches about when you're trying to correct behavior because I was reading an article recently, and I'm pretty sure that this is maybe like an old story,
Mhm.
but I was reading this article where I think Snoop Dogg was talking about when Dionne Warwick invited him and maybe I think some other rappers to meet with her about the nature of the lyrics in which are put in their music, especially about women,
Yes,
and
Dion.
yeah. And I loved how in the nature of his interview, how he was saying like, we were all there promptly, not necessarily on time, but 10 minutes early because this is Miss Dion War, and I love that.
Oh
I love
God.
that part of the interview. But I really what captured my interest about the interview was to know that here you have this mega talented woman, of course, is
Mm,
Dionne Warwick, and the fact that she is wanting to again, for first of all, have a private conversation, with these black men who are in rap and hip hop to make them understand about the nature of the misogynist lyrics that they put out. And
mm,
I applaud her for that. But I had a slight tweak in my thought process about that because from my understanding, and for I may be a little bit, miscorrect because I'm not quite sure. A lot of times, rap music in particular, or at least what I would consider like hardcore rap,
mm-hmm,
is mainly bought by white mainstreamers
mm-hmm.
and women.
That's true.
And so I was kind of like, I applaud Dion for what, for doing it because it definitely was, I think, a conversation that needed to be had. But I was like, I was wondering in my head, but did she like host like some sort of talk or conversation or suppose with women to try to understand about why is it do we respond though to to certain rap lyrics or try to not necessarily call out but shine an attention on white mainstreamers who mostly buy rap
Mm-hmm.
music. So I don't know, it's like I'm not trying to say like what she did was incorrect or anything. In fact, I love the nature of the article in itself, but I feel like to just segment to just the and I think it happened is because yeah, these are the artists that are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, of course, you're gonna get the blunt of it. But as an artist, you put out what sells.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's why I've always thought about no matter if you're talking about musicians or actors or whatever, you do in nature what sells because that's what keeps you making coin. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not until the public does something different or better yet, as I say, not respond to it because it's like if you're not responding to it, then you're not getting my coins about it.
Yeah.
And so that way you get the message about, oh, wait a minute, maybe I need to, maybe there's a message here that I need to do something differently.
I wonder if we're at a point for a lot of creatives where we're just like, am I truly willing to sell out my own integrity for that
Mm,
much? Like I think about all the blues songs, the old school gospel, which is now what we would consider R&B, like all those
mm,
old school songs, country songs, all about selling your soul to the devil and all this other stuff, and like not holding yourself, well, holding on to your own integrity for your own art.
mm,
Are we going to get to that point where we choose to no longer sell ourselves? Like,
mm,
are we going to get to the point where we will rather have a small following of
mm,
people who support our message of the uplift and the struggles that we face as Black people in our community versus trying to make the buck?
mm,
Try to disrespect each other in some way or push a certain narrative of Black men are this, Black women should be doing this, all these things. Are we going to get
mm,
to a point where we're going to stop pushing that narrative just for money?
mm.
Like that's my
Yeah.
my main thought right now.
And I think also too, we have to take responsibility as a public to, recognize that I'm sorry, as a public, we are some of the most fickle people on planet Earth.
Mm,
It's like you get upset because like a music artist or an actor or whatever, they want to, you want to see them do things that are different. You don't want them to be put in a box. But then the moment that they do something different, oh, now we got all these types of reactions and
mm,
we put it out there. And my thing is like, hey, they may do something that, hey, may miss the mark, but instead, why don't we try to handle it with care in saying that, hey, if this artist or this, actor or whoever this is kind of made a misstep, it's like instead of bashing them, like we don't have to go
Mm,
to such extremes. Like, hey, maybe they could do this next time to kind of like meet this to kind of like meet this halfway. Like, for instance, everybody knows who knows me knows that one of my favorite artists of all time is Brandy. I
ooh,
love me some
yes.
Brandy. And I love the fact that she's getting into this like new era that we're hearing more rap from her. Now, I hope that with her new deal with Motown Records, that in the next album that maybe half the music she may be doing what she does best with her singing, but that maybe we hear more rap. Now,
Mhm.
do I particularly want to hear an all rap album? I'm not quite sure, but of course I'm biased because I'm an ultimate Brandy fan, so I'm gonna pretty much love anything she does. But it is to say that when artists are trying something new or they're trying to get into new elements, even if they do something that you don't necessarily appreciate too much, either you don't have to respond to it, or at least if you're gonna respond to it, give it some constructive criticism. Applaud them for stepping out that box. Like, yeah, I've been waiting for this. I've been wanting to hear something different from this or see something different from this artist. Was it my cup of tea? Not necessarily, but I applaud them for doing. But I applaud
Mhm.
them for doing it.
I'll have two more things before we go into a never have I ever or sets question. I might do the sets question, but so I will say we also need to practice forgiveness for multiple artists who do are creators who do deserve it, like the incident with Will Smith.
Mm,
Like, granted, okay, he was in the wrong, but he also was in the right. But at the end of the day, I don't give a damn about that slap, really, because like,
mm,
look, he did what he did.
right,
However, your pieces make that your think piece is not really about the slap, but the amount of bullying that man had to go through from a lot of people because of this stuff that's going on with Jada, with August Alsina, people calling him less of a man, people going all up in his relationship about how, like, how dare you let this woman be out here to talk about all your business? This man, he does not want to control his wife, okay? That's not who he is. He's not about controlling
mm,
people. He's about being free and being happy. Let him be. But people judging his relationship, all these things, yet we don't ever really want to give him his props for real, for real.
mm.
Like, we want
Exactly,
to constantly judge him for every wrong thing that he does, even if it's a new movie that people don't agree with that he's taking part of, even though they're going to go see it, even though they're going to like it, but they're still not going to show the man his respects for all that he's done outside of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. Like,
right.
the man is extremely talented.
Yeah, and I even said like in my Facebook post because I really don't post too much when it comes to things like this because I'm not the type of person to get into arguments with people in the comment
Mhm.
section and stuff like that. In fact, I forgot to turn my comments off. Shame on me. Um, but I remember when the incident happened, when I commented, I was like, there are sometimes when the control that keeps us sane slips through our fingers. We don't know all that happened. We don't know if Jada said something, to do it, if he did it off of impulse. We don't know anything of that because we weren't there.
Mhm.
But what I did say was that it was an unfortunate thing to have happen because to me, both of them were in the wrong in some way. And there's accountability that needs to have by all. But let's not make that's not a justification to paint Will Smith as this violent person
Exactly.
or to diminish the nature of Chris Rock deserving to be hit, or
Mhm.
anything like that. I did say when the incident happened, I think for them to have been, of course, supposedly friends, and especially in Hollywood, that if, hey, if that was me, if I had a problem with it, that's something that, could have been talked about or settled backstage. And it was an unfortunate thing that it had to play out in front of millions of people on television for a very historic night, of course. But I think I said in my post, let's not perpetuate this nature of Will Smith being violent, or just things like that. And I said, hopefully one day they can come to some sort of reconciliation, and
Mhm.
if not, both of them still can move forward in the greatness that they are,
Look,
because both of them are immensely great and talented at what they do.
they both got the
So
money anyway, so they good. They'll be all right. And the other thing, they demonized Will Smith more than they demonized these motherfuckers that ran the Capitol. That's all I'm
yeah,
saying.
exactly,
But
exactly. And because Will Smith is Will Smith, he's held to a higher, a higher standard of behavior.
right,
You know,
so
so,
but
but it
the
is.
other the other thing that I want to bring up is in terms of forgiveness is with Chrisette Michelle. People damn near cancel her out because she said that we should at least, as a community, have one artist to perform for Trump to, at his inauguration. I think she was going to do it, whatever. And then, it was like cancel Michelle. And I'm not much. Yeah, Chrisette Michelle. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and cancel her altogether. We got Erica Badu. Like, look, y'all, she's just trying to spread some love. Like, calm down. Yet Kanye can be buddy buddy with the man, and not one damn thing is said. So y'all owe her an apology. That's all I'm saying. That's
Hmm,
all I'm saying. But on that note, I'm going to do a would you rather.
okay.
So, would you rather give up masturbating for a year or give up sex for 4 months?
Definitely give up sex for 4 months. Like my hand is my best friend, so um,
I support that.
it gets you through.
Look, I would definitely go with give up sex for 4 months. Because
Yeah, I'm
like you
not
said,
like yeah, you're not coming in between me and my masturbation. Like that's not gonna happen.
exactly,
No,
exactly. Like self-love is good love, and you can't be trusting everybody out here in these streets.
exactly.
Most definitely these days, you be out here trying to pull up on somebody, and then they flake on you, or they lying about who they are. It's a lot. These streets are.
Mhm.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And listen, when it comes to you, your hand, or anything else you may be using, because hey, uh, the at the end of the day, the person I trust the most is myself.
Exactly.
So.
Speaking of any other things that you can be using, it should be out by this point when this airs. There is going to be, I will be releasing some of the episodes on the Soliloquy podcast because look, content is content. I'm going to do whatever. But the vibrator in my pod, that podcast will be out here, motherfuckers. So be on the ready, be on the lookout. It's going to be a separate thing. So you can follow that podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll have a link in the bio if I remember to do it. But be on the lookout for that, everybody. So what's the buzz? The vibrator in my pod. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, on that note, Tyrell, do you have any last words that you'd like to share with the audience before we close everything out?
Just as we've been talking about, a mass of pop culture topics throughout the nature of this segment, just to reframe it in the nature of as we think about gender bias, gender roles, moving forward, just know that the narratives that you come into view or have, just know that those are, your perspective is not the only perspective, and you don't have to agree, or embody or live certain narratives, but just know that there are different narratives about gender that are out there that you don't have to necessarily agree with, but at least come to the nature of listening, do more listening, and just have respect for how it is that people choose to move.
Amen to that. Well, thank you so much, Tyrell, for coming on to the podcast. You're greatly appreciated.
Always, thank you.
Now, to the listeners out there, thank you all so much for listening to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. Just in case no one else told you this today, you are beautiful, you are worthy of happiness and joy, you are enough and then some. You may not live up to the expectations of others, but that is okay. You are only required to walk in your own shoes. May each day you live lead you towards abundance. With that said, love you all and see you next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. You can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app and find us on the web at www.soliloquy.com. That's www.heauxliloquy.com.
Share the podcast with your friends and join the conversation.